Hello, friends, and welcome into the weekly update from your team here at NC Family. This is the week ending May 1st. Jerry, it is already May. Of course,
Wow.
we're recording this a few days before that, but when you watch this, it is May the 1st. Hard to believe we're already 4 months through the year, starting on the 5th. A lot is happening. Short session is underway, so let's get right to some things that are happening at the NCGA. Yesterday, there was a Senate committee hearing on HB 301, Education Committee hearing, and we've been focused on 301 for some time. Tell our friends what HB 301 is in its latest iteration.
Okay. Well, it's dealing with the area of social media, especially relates to our children. I mean, we're seeing more and more how it's impacting a lot of life, but specifically with children, everybody, it's pretty much unanimous that the legislature recognizes the need to protect our children.
Absolutely.
And Mitch, you were part of helping to encourage members yesterday in the committee meeting about this particular issue. And I loved it too, how it always helps when it's not just an issue, when it's where people bring it to a personal level.
Absolutely.
And you were able to share, and I want to jump in with
No.
having 3 sons and
Yeah.
my friends have this and this,
Oh, yeah.
and why can't, it doesn't hurt them, there's no harm. Well, again, at all ages, but especially with minors. And so what
Yes.
this bill would do was bring restrictions into what minors can access.
Yes.
14 and under, no access. 15, 16, parental consent
Yes.
required. And so it's hopefully going to bring in protections. And right now, I know my mind is wondering, I know as a parent, there are enough challenges. If
yes.
the government can help eliminate some of the challenges, like you shared about having
Yes.
children who are going, why can't I do this? All my friends have that. Well, their friends shouldn't have it, and our children shouldn't either.
Absolutely. There's an educational component of this now since it went through Senate Education, specifically in regards to how children learn about AI. So that was added to the bill. You can read more about this in a story just below this video. A link's provided for you to learn more. It now goes to Senate Judiciary. Hopefully it'll make its way to the Senate floor. The main House sponsor of the bill believes that all of these, and they are so far all friendly amendments on the Senate side, so hopefully the House will concur rapidly and the governor will sign this into law as quickly as possible, again, to protect the hearts and minds of our children from some of the harmful dangers of social media and technology. And we're not stopping here. More to come on many of the tools that we can use to help parents parent their children best and protect the hearts, minds, and very lives of children from some of the harms of technology, social media, some of the apps that are on their phone. A lot also happening in the building this week in regard to Medicaid rebates. Still some giant looming question marks around property taxes and what that looks like. The budget. Tell us what we need to know about those things.
Well, they did continue the work on Medicaid, addressing the proper funding, trying to put guidelines in to protect from abuse of the system. Property tax continues to be a big issue. I know a number of the members shared that was a big issue they were hearing on the campaign trail.
Yes.
Because it's gotten out there, people are recognizing a lot of the challenges. Another example that was shared this week was like a 70% increase in the reevaluation of certain property. The Senate, this was in Senate committee this week. Previous activity had been on the House side. The House had been looking at a proposed constitutional amendment to be on the ballot that would restrict the increases in property taxes, looking at things like changes in population, inflation rate. The Senate's taken a little different approach. What they're calling for so far in their committee is to put a moratorium on reevaluations. And as I mentioned, one example was shared. If you've all of a sudden you're living on property that gets reevaluated,
Right.
It goes up 70%. If your tax rate stays the same, your taxes go up
Right.
70%,
Hell.
talking about limited income that
Right.
people have, especially older people, you're going to force people out of their homes. So this is a big issue. The legislature is focused on that, but this is also part of the process.
Right.
We're getting different perspectives from both chambers, but again, this is part of how the process works, hopefully bringing proper relief so that the increases are not such that they're hurting families in a
Right.
significant way.
Certainly a lot of thoughtful debate from both chambers, both the House and the Senate, when it comes to property taxes and what to do for people just like us and how we pay those property taxes and not making them so burdensome as not to literally break the bank for some of the individuals who are having to deal with some of these exorbitant rate increases. Of course, there's still a looming question around the budget. Some of the discussions and the way the Medicaid rebase process was handled does lend to some positive steps moving in the right direction toward the two chambers working together to get a comprehensive fiscal budget. We'll let you know how that progresses in the weeks ahead. Out of Washington, some Supreme Court rulings this week. One case we're not going to spend a lot of time on, but basically focused on redistricting, a state case out of Louisiana, around racial lines, that sort of thing. If you'll remember, we had a redistricting case here in North Carolina, but that was on political lines. Of course, that was adjudicated in the state Supreme Court, from what I remember, and it was deemed okay or lawful, constitutional for that to happen. That focused on the 1st and the 3rd districts here in North Carolina, but that's not the Supreme Court case. And Jerry, if you got anything on that.
Well, all that to say, I think we've all been hearing for a good while now, the whole issue of how district lines are drawn.
Yes.
Excuse me, and everybody always says, well, whatever party's in control, obviously they're going to hopefully try to draw them in the right way, or the inclination is draw them to your own benefit. And like you say, I think the way they've recent rulings, and hopefully this is accurate representation, when it comes to partisan gerrymandering, just that's the court's going, that's what we leave. It's up to the legislature to do that. The issue of race has been an ongoing one, and apparently, it was part of what the court was saying in this particular ruling, and the impact of that, and this is the bigger picture, is right now with the House and Senate numbers and Congress being so close, if the law either encourages or discourages certain types of drawing of the district lines, it could have a big impact on who ends up being in the U.S. House and U.S. Senate.
Absolutely. And the balance of power there, especially as things are continually in a state of flux. The landmark case, however, is First Choice Women's Resource Centers out of the state of New Jersey versus Platkin. This was a unanimous ruling in favor of the First Choice Women's Centers, and basically it affirming donor privacy. That's something that we've been focused on. That's something that our friend in New York, Jason McGuire, was a victim of lawfare from AG Letitia James there in the state of New York. The beauty of this is that we have NC law to back this up. Our team was a part of that in the first year of the biennium, ensuring that donor privacy, that when you give to us or any other C3 or nonprofit for that matter, that your privacy is maintained throughout that process. Not so in the case of First Choice Women's Center. Their records were subpoenaed. This case made its way all the way to the Supreme Court. And it's remarkable, Jerry, that it was unanimous, that all 9 justices sided with First Choice.
It's interesting to see the court, this is what we're all encouraged when, like you say, you see a unanimous ruling. When it comes to First Amendment rights, it seems in recent history, more and more the court is going, yes, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of conscience. We shouldn't allow the government to do things that would interfere with that. And in this case, I think the case was clearly made that the government was acting in a way by trying to get this information, it would have a chilling effect, is one word that people use, on freedom of expression. If you all listening and we ourselves are supporting a nonprofit, a ministry, and all of a sudden we hear in today's world, if our names are made public,
I may not give to that organization.
Well, and this is what, and as you say, this case related to Pregnancy Resource Center, and you're going, it's a vital area of protecting life from mothers and unborn children. And all of a sudden people who are going, well, if they're going to put my name out there in public, I understand how some of the public believes differently from myself, and they may act towards me or whatever. the government's going, we should not allow the government to do anything that's going to cause restriction of this form of expression.
Absolutely. Our friends at ADF did a great job in this case. To read more about what they had to say, to read more about the case itself, including Jason McGuire and his story, you can go to the link just below this or go to ncfamily.org and learn more about this case and what it entails in more detail.
And as you mentioned, Mitch, when you were describing this, once again, we see something happen on a national level that thankfully the North Carolina legislature acted
Yes.
prior to
Yes.
this ruling. Last year, they realized we need to protect donor privacy, and so we did have a law that was passed through a veto override. Thankfully, the votes were there to realize, yes, we need to protect donor privacy.
Speaking of good things coming out of North Carolina, Senator Budd has proposed a bill in the U.S. Senate. Jerry, tell us more about this bill and what it would do for marijuana use.
Right. Well, as you all know from working, and thank you all for working together with us on so many issues, but marijuana use is something that's becoming more and more problematic in our society, where certain states are legalizing, not just for medicinal purposes, recreational. Well, what we're beginning to see, the health consequences are tragically, I don't even know how to describe, what we're seeing with increase. We've written about this.
Yes.
With hospitalizations, with psychosis, with addiction, all of this with young people and older people.
Detrimental effects on the family.
Right. So thankfully, one way to speak into this issue is, I believe, it's like God gave Senator Budd the wisdom to say, let's look at how these medical effects of marijuana are impacting the cost of Medicaid today. And people go, that is a very creative way to say, let's look at the realities of what we're facing. People want to argue various ways. I think this is a great way to help people see, yes, there are significant, I mean, he talks in his statement about it, heart attack, stroke, psychotic disorders. The evidence is clear about all these things on the increase because of the increased use of marijuana.
And so that would affect the way Medicaid takes care of these things, the burden passed on to not just the federal government, but the taxpayer, because we fund the federal government through our tax dollars.
Right.
And so if marijuana usage proliferates further than what it already is, then that could cost the taxpayers more. Brilliant strategy from Senator Budd here.
Right.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Senator Budd. You can learn more about that with a link below this video as well. Our team has written an article on that as well this week. Just outstanding job from our team putting out so many helpful resources for you. Lastly today, we learned about something last week when John and I were in D.C. We were talking with Congressman Harris, and earlier last year we reported on a story out of the state of Texas in regard to the national religious broadcasters and basically an agreement with the IRS that they had come to with several churches they were representing, and the IRS said it's okay for you to engage in political speech so long as it occurs within the normal course of you talking to the family, your church congregation. On March the 31st, a federal district court judge did away with that. He dismissed that agreement. Jerry, you're the attorney here. Tell us what this means moving forward.
All right. Well, you know, this is an ongoing discussion and debate. What does free speech look like, specifically when it comes to churches, nonprofits? It goes back to what's referred to as the Johnson Amendment.
Yes.
Where apparently then Senator Johnson was in a campaign, nonprofit was participating in the campaign, and was thinking, no, they shouldn't be participating. So basically the language that's been in the IRS regulations is that nonprofits cannot participate in political campaign activity for or against candidates. We've worked on this whole subject for years, trying to help individuals, churches realize that part of free speech, you can talk about a lot of things. You talk about issues, talk about them from a biblical perspective, but there was an understanding of a restriction with political campaign activity for or against a candidate. What, as you were saying, Mitch, there was another federal court prior to this recent action reached an agreement with national religious broadcasters, some churches, and the people involved in the lawsuit said, let's reach a consent agreement saying, yes, churches, if they want to have this kind of communication within the church, it's fine. We're not going to look at it, although, there's a whole nother story I could get into about how at some point churches were sending information to the IRS saying, we think it's part of free speech. This is what we're doing from the pulpit. The IRS apparently did not ever take action in those cases. But this is a way to clarify the law, because you're talking about churches, you're talking about God's word saying submit to the governing authorities. Well, it had looked like the governing authorities were now saying it's okay. Now another federal court is, then again, it's the district court level, is saying, well, no, even though there was a consent agreement, we're not going to allow that to go forward. So the case is going to be appealed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. This looks like something that's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. As our first, mention today about free speech, hopefully the court, if it does go to that level, will once again say, free speech is free speech.
Yes.
We need to allow the people to express themselves based on their conscience, their sincerely held religious beliefs. But as you say, right now, things have gone back to where they were as far as an understanding about that restriction on political campaign activity for or against candidates.
So as this case works its way through the court system, ultimately most likely headed to the Supreme Court at some point, it's incumbent upon us to realize that legislative process is so important. Congressman Harris has the Free Speech Fairness Act. Right. He's working with leadership in the House right now to get this done that would basically codify these changes and enshrine them in the law of the United States so that these churches have these freedoms, these religious entities, churches, and without fear of reprisal from the IRS and other government agencies and entities. So thank you for your efforts, Congressman Harris, and your office for doing this, and for those that support the Free Speech Fairness Act. We're grateful for that, and hopefully that will continue to progress, and whether it passes the House, makes its way over to the Senate, what the Senate does, we'll keep you up to date about that. Of course, guess what? There's a link below this video where you can learn more about all of that as well. If you want to learn more details about the Free Speech Fairness Act, Congressman Harris, and more about this story regarding the National Religious Broadcasters and the IRS. Want to let you know, we've told you several times about our Raleigh dinner that's coming up on May the 14th. Chairman Andrew Ferguson of the Federal Trade Commission is going to be with us. You don't want to miss it. If you're in the Raleigh area, you can click below this video to learn more about how you can be at the dinner. There's several sponsorship opportunities that are still available, but May 14th is only 13 days away from when this video comes out, so you've got a limited amount of time to get to the Raleigh dinner, the We Hold These Truths Raleigh dinner on May 14th at the Angus Barn right here in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's going to be a great night, and I'm super excited about it. Jerry, thank you for your insight, your wisdom today for our weekly update. Thank you for continually being at the building and doing an outstanding job making sure that our voice, your voice, is heard at the North Carolina General Assembly.
You as well.
Absolutely. Well, it's a privilege to serve alongside of you and to serve you as we continue to make sure that North Carolina is a state where God is honored, religious freedom flourishes, families thrive, and life is cherished. So thank you for watching this week's weekly update video. We hope that you have a great weekend. God bless you all.